I'll do my very best to get this job that I so crave.
Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of Fanzone Debate. We are here in round one of the tournament, of the 2023 tournament. I don't know. I'm used to saying Summer Series tournament, hosting Fandom, but this is the regular tournament. That's what it is right now. And it's very exciting. It's been a long road, but we're getting towards the end of round number one, and we are at the 7 seed and the 10 seed. The 7 seed being Robert Castner, and the 10 seed being Richard Schwartz, both underrated players, I think, in this game. Robert, known for his trivia skills, having a great season in Fandom and Melee, and now coming back to the debate ring. And Richard, someone who I think is sneaky good at debate. He's got really strong wins under his belt. And then his last loss was to Cody, who's the current champion. So again, like, Richard knows what he's doing. I've got two guys here. Thank you for bailing me out, gentlemen. We've got Brooklyn Vale. Brooklyn, it's been a while since we've seen you in the judging seat. I'm happy to have you back. How are you doing, my friend? And what do you think of the matchup?
I'm doing great. I have had this like second wind of like a love for debate. I think just like with the how close it is to like combat sports and how much you can apply that attack and defense. And I think in terms of defense, we're talking two of the better players here. These guys are usually pretty calm, cool, and collected. So you're not going to see them get like too riled up. And I'm just curious to see how they perform.
And Mark, welcome back. You've been here for a couple of these tournament matches, and now you're back for another. How are you doing, my friend, and how do you feel about the matchup?
I'm feeling pretty good. I've enjoyed watching these guys in the past, and also getting a peek at the questions. They got some interesting questions coming up. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna get into this. We're gonna start by talking to the second or the lower ranked player, Richard Schwartz. Richard, welcome back to the Fanzone debate ring. I always love having you here because you do a really good job, and I think people underestimate your ability to debate in the league. So you're back. Your last match, I was trying to find where it was. I think the last time you played was
I got swept by Cody.
It was Cody, but again, prior to that, you played Andrew Barr and you won that match, and I think people were underestimating you in that one. So how are you feeling about this going in as the lower seed today?
I'm feeling good. I'm always exhausted because I'm going to be going to bed after this. But, it's always fun. These were tough questions. Not really tough, but, I was excited to get these questions. And I'm going to wish Robert the best of luck. It should be a fun match. And hopefully I don't, twist my words like I usually do in these things. It's always fun.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Richard. Thank you for being here. And let's bring in the higher-ranked player, Robert Castner. Robert, welcome back to Fanzone Debate. You're coming in today, as I said, number 7 seed. The last time we saw you, I want to say, was when you played Cody as well. Your last match was a loss to Cody in a number 1 contenders match. So both of you have that in common. How are you feeling about the matchup, sir?
I'm just happy Cody's not here to judge this. I'm really happy to be here for Fanlay, Mayfan.
Yeah, big fan.
Only fans. Is that what no, wait, that's something different. No, something different. Sorry. I'm excited to be here to debate. Yeah, it's been a while. That Cody match stung a little bit for me, even though I got a point and I got you to go against Monsters Inc. That was the crowning achievement of my debate.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Crowning achievement. I'm looking forward to this. I've been doing all my notes and doing all the stuff that I usually do. It's been more difficult now with child, but I managed to find a way to do so. And I'm looking forward to debating Richard. These are fun questions.
Awesome. All right. Well, here's how the show is going to work. Robert and Richard are going to debate some questions that based off categories they drafted. I gave them the questions. They gave me the answers. They're going to debate those questions tonight before our very souls. They are going to get a 1-minute opening, followed by a 5-minute free form, followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of the debate, Brooklyn, Mark, and I will write on our handy boards, paper, phone, whatever you have, who we think won that debate. 2 out of 3 votes wins you a point, and the first person to 3 points wins the match. If we are tied 2-2 going out of those prep questions, we will move to a bonus question should the time come. Gentlemen, any questions as we get into the first debate?
No, just don't want to get hit with a stick.
That's fair. That's fair. I do threaten that. Let's get into this. First question. Was drafted by Robert. It is in the category of actors and actresses, and the question is simply, what is the best Jake Gyllenhaal performance? I love this question. This is timely at the time of recording. He has a new film out in theaters now, The Covenant, directed by Maggie's favorite director, Guy Ritchie. Robert, you were going to kick this one off. You are going to have a 1 minute when your time starts. I will come in to give you a 10-second warning when the time comes. 1 minute when you start talking.
So I drafted this question because you won't find a bigger Jake Gyllenhaal stan than me. He's actually my favorite actor going. Generally, Gyllenhaal has a tendency to play at one level consistently when he's going throughout a film. But I decided to pick a performance where he doesn't do that, where he shows a bunch of different layers, where he actually shows evolution of a character, and it plays off really well with the person he's the scene partner with. I chose Jack Twist, the rodeo cowboy from Brokeback Mountain. There's a myriad of reasons why Jake Gyllenhaal, this is his performance, is defining one. One big key is that it's the only performance he ever got nominated for an Oscar, and he lost to a career-defining performance by George Clooney and Syriana. But like I said, there's a lot of situations where as you're going through his relationship with Heath Ledger, he seems more like a person, whereas opposed to in other performances, he's playing a type and he's playing a characteristic. And that's why I think this one really shines for him. I will go into more detail about why that is as we go through forward, but Brokeback is his best performance by far.
Time. Perfect. All right, Richard, we're going to move over to you. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking. What is the best Jake Gyllenhaal performance?
To me, the best Jake Gyllenhaal performance is Louis Bloom in Nightcrawler. Louis Bloom is a man who takes up becoming a video photographer to find crime and then sell it to the news. Why I feel like this character is the best, this is the best performance, is he has to play so many different levels. He has to play like a man who seems charming and innocent at one point, and then a deranged psychopath in another, and kind of blended together nicely. And I feel like this performance was so well done, so like it was like almost perfection, but like he had to like mix around different types of characters all in one in like seconds. And I will also go into it more why I feel like this is the best performance once we get to the fighting round.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm still trying to get used to getting I have no two front teeth anymore, so I have to get used to talking like this.
You're good. All right. So Nightcrawler versus Brokeback Mountain. Gentlemen, you have 5 minutes. When one of you starts talking, I will throw the 1 minute warning up when the time comes. And if I feel like someone is talking too much, I'll throw up the let's move on. And if I have to come in, I will beat you with a stick. So 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I'll let you go first, Robert.
Oh, okay. So my biggest issue with Nightcrawler, I like the performance in Nightcrawler, but my biggest issue with it, especially in comparison to Brokeback, is that from the outset of the movie, you said there's a bunch of different layers, but right from the jump, when we see him trying to break into a train yard and then get his way out of being a trespasser and then assaulting a security guard and stealing his watch, we sort of already know what Louis Bloom is. He's a sociopath, he's manipulative, and he's violent. And this is kind of the same for what Jake Gyllenhaal does. Like I said, he sort of plays a characteristic. He does it compellingly. I love it, but he does it in a way that there's not a whole lot of evolution. Like we've seen him play disjointed and somewhat of a person on the outside. Donnie Darko, he does that. We've seen him play an obsessive, which he does very well in stuff like Prisoners and Zodiac. And this is just sort of old hat to that. Whereas with Brokeback, you're seeing the evolution of a person because of how the relationship between him and Heath Ledger and Enos are manifesting over the course of 20 years. It has that benefit where it has a long-winded road to go in and to see him evolve over time, where I don't think we get that much with Nightcrawler.
I disagree. Like even when you say off the bat when he's attacking the security guard, you don't know what the motivation, what he was doing at that place. It could have been like he was having a bad day. We don't know. You know, something could have gone through his head where, again, he could be very well autistic. They don't go into if he has any medical condition, but that was my mindset watching it. He might be like somewhat autistic. Whereas I feel like when you say you're the Brokeback Mountain character he has the same layer. I don't know where he's saying he has multiple layers. Like it's a very slow like type of play he plays throughout the majority of the film. And like even when him and Heath Ledger first get together, it like came out of like nowhere. There was like no like motivation. Like they were talking a little bit during the campfire, and then he moves into the tent, and now all of a sudden they're making love. But also like it's a great performance. Don't get me wrong, but I think the most impact of that movie was when it came out during its time, because this was like the first time like in a while that you seen like a movie like this during like the early 2000s where like it was, I mean, gay people were accepted, but it was still like people were afraid to come out of the closet this time. And I feel like that was more of a shock factor for Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal than there's actual performance.
I can't deny that there's a stigma placed with it and wondered of its time. But you said there's no. I mean, they have a series of conversations leading up to the point, and then they get drunk, which is obviously the catalyst for them getting together. But you see him go from someone who doesn't talk a whole lot. He's a bit reserved, but he has a little bit of a playful side, and you see how not having an unrequited, not available open love affair, how it burdens him. You see that like when he comes up after he hears Enos has gotten divorced and Enos has his kids, and he's like, I can't do this right now, Jack. You have to come back. He drove hundreds of miles to come with him. And then you see like there's a microcosm of adjacent between when he's going up and he's singing in the car and he's so effusive, and then when he's rejected, there's so much pain in that's not just what he's evoking from his face, but it's everything that you feel that he's not expressing as well as he goes to Mexico and he starts trying to live out sort of his fantasies. So I think there's more layers to it than you want to give it credit for. I think like as he's going over time and his family life is developing, like as he's getting angrier and angrier, he has that scene at Thanksgiving with his father-in-law where his father-in-law and him are butting heads, and he has that he's trying to be the alpha male. So I think there's a lot of layers to that. I think with Nightcrawler, I think a lot of what makes up.
Okay. When you're saying like he has a playful side and not talking much side, the playful side we've seen him like when he was in Bubble Boy. The talking side, like when he's being hesitant, being kind of shy, we've seen that performance in Day After Tomorrow. But what makes my character far more better performance is like just for the scene where he literally looks himself in the mirror and starts screaming. Like you see him like calming, just like that burst of emotion. That also he has to play a character who's kind of like innocent and suave, but at the same time, you can see that twist of like psychotic things he has slightly when he's blackmailing Nina. I think also what sets my character from your character apart from performance-wise is, how they always get Tobey Maguire? They always say look alike. I feel like Tobey Maguire can do Brokeback Mountain. Tobey Maguire could not do the film Nightcrawler.
No, I mean he could in Tropic Thunder.
All right. We're gonna start with Richard. Richard, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
I enjoyed Jake Gyllenhaal's performance of Brokeback Mountain, but I think for the most part, people when they talk about Brokeback Mountain, they talk about it was two guys kissing, two guys making love, two straight men who are who are playing gay characters. Whereas, and also, people will talk more about Heath Ledger's performance because he, sadly has passed on during this time. Whereas, there are so many different levels of Jake Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler where he has to play multiple characters, multiple emotions all at once. Where I feel like it's a lot easier Jake Gyllenhaal to play his role in Brokeback Mountain because there wasn't too much depth of the level of character. It was so sorry. I end the rest of my turn. Beth, I am busy.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna bring in Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking to close your argument.
Richard said we didn't know what Louis Bloom was like at the beginning because we didn't know what his tendencies were. I mean, he's a thief. He goes and he sells the copper wiring and the fencing right away. So we know exactly what he is, and that just builds on. He gets more comfortable with the idea of being a stringer and filming crimes, but he's the same throughout. It's not the same as Brokeback. And actually in Brokeback, as a comparison to Heath, he has to play at that level and he has less pathos to deal with. So he actually has the harder job to maintain, to live up to that. And they both got nominated for an Oscar. I know there's that stigma of it being a same-sex relationship done in this Oscar-type movie, but it's not just about that. It's about how he plays into that relationship, how they do the give and take, how he progresses over time. It's not one note. It's more one note in Nightcrawler. There's a lot of performances that boost Nightcrawler outside of Jake Gyllenhaal. There's a lot of the expert writing and directing of Dan Gilroy, the setting of LA, especially at night, that makes up that movie. Whereas if it's not for the give and take, the seesaw relationship between Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, Brokeback doesn't work. So that's why it is the more masterful performance.
Okay. So we will bring in the judges.
Sorry, my sister came in, so that kind of distracted me.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I literally was just coming in. You had like 10 seconds left. Ooh. All right, judges ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I went with Robert. I thought that both were good, actually. I think that both had a really good understanding of both of their performances and their opponents' performances. But I think at the end of the day, what kind of swung it for me was Richard was kind of selling it as like a multi-layered performance, where Brokeback was kind of like Heath Ledger might have been the more the one that you gravitate towards more because of the real life things. But I thought Robert was very well able to explain why Jake Gyllenhaal was just as good, if not better, than Heath Ledger, and why his Nightcrawler performance, while good, is maybe a little bit more not as multi-layered as Richard was making it out to be. So I thought it was a good fight on both ends, but I went with Robert. Mark, where are you going and why?
Yeah, I also went with Castner. It says Castner. I think where Robert kind of won me, like kind of honestly a little bit of his opening, kind of going on his opening, how the Jack Twist performance is where Gyllenhaal is playing a person, and then I thought he had a pretty decent when Richard brought up that Louis Bloom, he has to go in a lot of levels in him, but Robert, I think, countered that pretty well by saying we kind of know who Louis Bloom is from the very get-go of the film, and it's just I thought that was a pretty nice hit, and so that's more or less why I went with Robert.
Okay, Brooklyn, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
I also went Robert. I thought he did a really good job defending the plethora of attacks that Richard was kind of throwing at him. I thought Richard went pretty heavy on that, with the whole they played gay to win an Oscar and whatnot. But I think Robert did a really good job responding to that the lack of build in the performance when he's talking about the burden of the relationship and the whole Thanksgiving scene. So yeah, that's where I swayed.
Okay. All right, so Robert wins the first point, but we are going to move on to the next question, which was drafted by Richard. It was in the category of the MCU, and the question was, what is the worst Phase 4 MCU action scene? Richard, you get to go first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
See, this was actually kind of tougher than usual, even though some of the MCU movies in Phase 4 weren't as good as previous phases. Most part, all the action scenes pretty good, except for one, in my opinion, and I chose the America Chavez versus Wanda fight scene in Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. This, to me, was the worst fight action sequence because for multiple reasons. I don't want to go into it until I get to the fight, but I will just say a lot of convenience that had to happen during this fight scene. A lot of convenience happened. A lot of just wildness and things that happened that weren't natural to either characters. And I will go more into the America Chavez versus Wanda.
Okay. Ending about 10 seconds early. We're going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute when you start talking. What is the worst Phase 4 MCU action scene?
So I know when a lot of people debate best versus worst action scenes, when they think of worst, they usually bring up pacing, impact on the rest of the movie, was it cool or not, all these things. But I think one important factor for that should be whether an action scene makes you physically ill to watch. And that is why I chose my scene, which is the final fight of Act 3 in Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings, which is Shang-Chi and the Great Protector and Ji Ling versus the Dweller in Darkness. We already had sort of the quintessential culmination fight right before this. And this is just empty calories on top of what was a chef's kiss meal. It's the thing that MCU movies do where it tries to CGI-ify the end part so that it makes it big on a scale. But we didn't need that. It was already big enough of a scale in the previous fight. There's so much swirling color and sound being thrown at you. It's too much. There's too much input. That's why it sucks. And it didn't need to be there.
Time. All right. So the end of Doctor Strange 2 versus the end of Shang-Chi. Gentlemen, you have 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
All right, I love your action scene. Like, it is such a beautiful like sequence of like the way the two dragons are like, you know, dodging each other, the waves. It was just a beautiful scene, especially with Shang-Chi and his sister on top. I just like, yeah, it is a CGI versus CGI, but we have a lot of those in the MCU to begin with. And, you know, they enjoy it. Like, some of it, you know, Thanos vs. Hulk was fun to watch. Hulk Abomination was fun to watch. This was also just fun to watch.
Richard, the difference between those CGI fights and this one is that those are two corporeal beings. These are swirling masses of giant creatures. And when you add in swirling water on top of it, and then they do the shaky cam where they move it, it's like playing a God of War game, but you're not, when they do first person camera, there's a lot of shakiness. I'm glad you could differentiate it, but I couldn't as I was watching it. It was so much. Your scene, at least, because it's two people fighting, I know what's going on. And at least, unlike my scene where we already had the payoff, emotional payoff, this is an emotional payoff moment. You might not like it, but at least it goes from America Chavez being a plot device to actually realizing her power. And as part of it, it has an impact on Wanda.
Speaking of plot device, the whole point of the America Chavez throughout the whole movie was she couldn't control her powers. Because she couldn't control her powers, and all of a sudden, towards the end, she can control her powers. Just with what, a motivational speech? Whereas, no, that is lazy. They had like no time for training, no time to do anything. Like, she literally, and then all of a sudden she's able to like beat Wanda, and also like that whole little was so cringeworthy. Whereas yours, you had a payoff, like you saying you didn't have an emotional payoff for characters. It did. It had an emotional payoff for Aquafina. She was able to get the bow and arrow to to distract. What was the bad dragon's names? Like the Musk or something.
The Dweller in Darkness.
The Dweller, yeah. That was a payoff moment for her.
Oh, Richard, first of all, you're going to talk about people not having training. Aquafina had an afternoon to train.
Yeah, okay, she had hours. Yes, she had hours of training. And like, even if you're a novice or have never done a bow and arrow, you can get some training done.
The Dweller in Darkness was hundreds of feet in the air, and she hit it in the perfect spot with her last arrow. By the way, when they're retelling the story after I'd already seen it, it feels so contrived when we're doing the recount of it. It's ridiculous. And at least America Chavez, she did have some training at Comertage. She did get to learn a little.
That was the ending of the film.
No,
where she got the training. She didn't get any training when she was there in the beginning. No, she was just there to be guarded by the other sorcerer. She had no training there.
She learned a bit while she was. I mean, she
was no, she didn't. She only learned towards the end of the film. That's when she started her training.
We'll say that they both had minimal training at the least, but like I said, at least America gets to go. Like, yes, people have. You said there are CGI parts in MCU movies. There are stupid speeches that happen that motivate people. That's just what happens in MCU movies. Yeah, the writing's lazy, but at least we get to see her. And she doesn't really beat Wanda. She uses her mind, because she can't beat Wanda straight on power, to open up a portal to show her kids who get scared of her, that then flips her to the conclusion. So at least there's an emotional impact.
Okay, but that whole conclusion about like her kids and everything, Doctor Strange told Wanda this right in the beginning of the film. And she wouldn't think. Now, just because she sees the kids, sees her other self, she finally, no.
Yeah. I mean, she had no visual she had no way to have the emotional
And also,
impact of that until then.
also with your film, yours, like, it's inspired by the Chinese films. Chinese films are very extravagant, very like fluid motions, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon had a lot of those aspects. A lot of other Japanese films with the dragons.
They did all the fluid motion in the Shang-Chi Wenwu fight. That's what I'm saying. Everything that we needed, the character building moment, and where Shang-Chi actually realizes the hero he is, that happens when he fights his dad.
But,
nothing like that happens during this Dweller in Darkness
but,
fight.
I mean, Shang-Chi's dad is a villain, but the Dweller was also the main villain. The whole point was to protect. What is the town's name? Shilong? Tai Lao. It was protect the Great Protector, and the Dweller wanted to come out. That was the big baddie. He was just Shang-Chi's dad was the side baddie.
No, I mean,
so yes, you did have
he's the guy who's there the whole time. We just hear whispers of the Dweller.
Yeah, but we hear about the Dweller throughout pretty much the whole film. So we need to see where the Dweller is. We need to see the Great Protector, and it's because you didn't like. You said you didn't like because of what make you sick when you were watching it.
Yeah, I couldn't manage to keep my eyes straight because everything was swirling around me. That's
I very well could. I mean, I understand that could be for you, but most people.
Time. Yeah. Strike it from the record. Robert, we're going to start with you. You got 1 minute when you start talking.
As I mentioned, all the emotional baggage, everything that happens with Shang-Chi and Wenwu is the main crux of the Act 3 fight that we needed. It has nothing to do with the Dweller in Darkness. Richard can keep saying that it was beautiful, but really it was too much to handle, too much input. At least with his scene, America Chavez gets to be the hero that she's supposed to be. We get to see a unique power set when she fights against Wanda, and she gets to drive towards the resolution of Wanda sacrificing herself. In my scene, there's too much going on. You don't know what's happening. It's empty calories. If you want first-person pan-up fighting with a large monster scaling up, play God of War. If you want to watch beautiful choreographed fights between abnormally powerful beings high in the air where the term Kamehameha is used and is used well, watch Dragon Ball Z. If you want to see CGI monsters attempt to suck the soul out of victims through their mouths, watch Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban with the Dementors. All of those things are better than this end fight with the Dweller in Darkness, which is too much to handle.
Time. I made a face because currently Maggie and I watching Goblet of Fire. So one movie off. Okay. So we're going to bring in Richard. Richard, you have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
The Great Protector Dweller scene was amazing. It was great. Just because my opponent thinks it was unnecessary does not mean it was not necessary. Every Awkwafina needed her moment. Her character needed her moment, and she got her moment to that scene. The two dragons fighting each other was really beautiful, really great. It was inspired by, Chinese lore, Chinese fantasy lore, which I think the MCU adapted, and it also makes it unique. Whereas the America Chavez fight scene was completely just, it was not necessarily came out of nowhere, but like the whole point of the movie, she could never control her powers. There was no even indication that she could ever control her powers, right until the Doctor Strange speech. And it also, that fight scene kind of hurt Wanda's character because Wanda was an Avenger. She learned to harness her powers for many years, whereas America Chavez didn't. I just think my scene is the worst because way too many things came out of nowhere that made no sense, whereas everything in Shang-Chi made sense and gave
time. All right. We'll bring in the judges. Yeah, when I came in before this question, in the background, it was the where our voices sound, we cannot sing up off the clouds. And I was like, I hope they don't hear it. Okay.
Harry, don't just go for Ron and get out of there. Win the round.
Yeah, right.
Dummy.
Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire, Harry?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm ready to go. How about the other judges?
Yeah.
Okay. Brooklyn, why don't you kick this one off?
You're muted.
Sorry, let's try that again. I don't think this was the best fight. We went off the rails a little bit. I think the whole like the whole training thing, like did that count or not, was kind of where it all started. But I ended up going with Robert. I think his closing was really well, and I think it just kind of came down to like the cinematography of Robert's scene versus kind of like the cringiness and everything that was happening in Richard's. I thought Robert did a better job.
Okay. I went with Richard. May the Schwartz be with you. Robert actually had me at one point. And the thing that kind of lost me was, I agree with Brooklyn. I thought this kind of went off the rails a little bit. I thought Richard's closing was super strong. And on the whole, if I was the fighter, I would have thrown on, if I was Robert in this scenario, I definitely talked about the fact that the action scene of America versus Scarlet Witch is basically non-existent in the sense that she kind of like throws like two punches and whatnot. And Richard was actually able to explain to me like really interesting things action-wise going on with the scene. Now, Robert was able to explain to me like negative things about like, yes, again, Brooklyn said he discounted the like character training and stuff like that's. I understood why they kind of went down that road. Like I think Robert was able to poke holes in the scene, but I think Richard actually did do a really good job, especially in his closing, of being able to say like, this big Dweller in Darkness, they've talked about it the whole movie. It came up. They fought it. It was awesome. And the jab about bringing up how Scarlet Witch was a fucking Avenger, and then just gets like smacked by some teenager, I thought was a pretty good hit. So on the whole, both good job to both of them. But I go with Richard.
Can I do a point of order before Mark? I was going to mention what you said, Tim, but I figured since you let the scene go in, that would just be in poor taste.
Oh no! I mean, I definitely. Well, that would be up to Richard to be like, well, they accepted it. Anyway, Mark, your vote is the deciding factor. Where are you going?
Interesting. Well, I mean, I feel like you both kind of said it. I feel like we went in some odd places with this fight. You know, that being said, I did go with Richard here. I mean, I feel weird talking about it because, you know, I don't actually compete in this division. Although I do think on some level, I think Robert maybe made a technical error on this one with his choice of fight. Just because, at least with here, it sounded like his fight was at least kind of fun. Like I would have fun watching it. And I feel like Richard made an argument to why his scene wasn't fun. And it also didn't it also kind of had like some lazy themes and kind of lazy writing in it, which didn't make it make sense. And I think that's kind of that was kind of, you know, where we were on. I almost feel like Robert was kind of fighting with one hand behind his back the whole time. So like I feel like Richard kind of got an easy win here.
That's fair. All right, so it's 1-1 out of question 2. We are going to move on to the next question, which was drafted by Robert. It is in the category of DreamWorks. The question is, what non-franchise DreamWorks film has the best villain? So, Robert, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So when you think of non-franchise DreamWorks in the arrangement of movies in this category, there's a lot of silliness, and frankly, there's a lot of bad movies, which is fair considering they haven't made any sequels to any of these movies. It's not franchise-based. So locating a villain amongst this list who isn't an also-ran or uninspiring was pretty tough. So I decided to go with the one who's the most fun, who encapsulates their movie the best, and that is Professor P.P. Diarrhea-Steen Poopy Pants Esquire from Captain Underpants, the first epic movie. In a movie where the hero wears only underpants, Professor Poopy Pants fits in perfectly. And with that name, as I described it, how could you not have fun with someone who offers this Lex Luthor-like super villain quality while having this snark behind him of a Nick Kroll who does his voice, mastering this voice work that he's done on for, many years now, with this great dialogue and these raunchy settings, dumbing it down for the sake of doing it for a kids movie. So that's why I chose Professor Poopy Pants, because it makes the most sense to me amidst the movie.
Time. Okay. Richard, we're going to move on to you. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
This was really hard because when you're taking out non-franchise DreamWorks villains, you're like leaving like maybe 4. So I went with Ramses from The Prince of Egypt. Ramses was the son of the pharaoh, whose adopted brother, Moses, as you might know if you guys ever read the Bible. They grew up together. They cared about each other. They felt like real brothers. When Moses attacks a guard later in his life, he leaves, and Ramses becomes the pharaoh. Moses returns to try to free his people, and now Ramses is now basically in the conundrum to either love his brother or to fight for freedom. I think he is the best villain because you can relate to this person. You see the pain in his eyes, the hatefulness when he does become the true villain, and he is a person to be feared and to be scared, and I will explain more when I go to my fighting. And man, this is going to be fun round.
I mean, to argue Professor Poopy Pants versus biblical character, it is going to be fun. 5-minute freeform, but one of you starts.
I'll let you go first, Rob.
Okay. So, Richard, you sort of brought it up, but I have a lot of problems with Ramses in general. But for the sake of this argument, one, half the movie, he's not even a villain. He's just sort of, again, he's the real brother to, he's the real son to the pharaoh. He's Moses' adopted brother. Moses had killed someone. He returns. He's still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then when they start actually butting heads theologically and philosophically, Ramses' whole plan is to ignore him. That's it. All this stuff happens, all this devastation, and Ramses is like, okay, I mean, that's my brother, so I'll just ignore him. And that's basically it. He lets his priests try to manage the theological front of this issue, and they don't do it. He doesn't do anything other than that till the end when he lets them go. And then there's like not a lot of motivation for Ramses other than living up to his father, which is the same word if any royal who tries to live up to his father's legacy. So there's not a whole lot of agency that Ramses has, where at least Poopy Pants, he's doing something, he's having fun, he's trying to control and get rid of children's laughter, which makes a lot of sense in the context of the movie because of his stupid name.
Yeah, and there's the thing. He's laughing the whole time, and so is the audience. Like, I think a villain, you at least need to be at least feared, or to be at least, like, want them to cheer against. You kind of don't want to cheer against Professor Poopy Pants. Like, if you want to go the best villain in your film, probably want to do the townspeople. The townspeople are assholes throughout the whole thing. Like, I think more people are sympathetic to Professor Poopy Pants. I don't think anyone could take him seriously as a villain, like, especially with the name. Even I know this movie's for kids, but I just don't think kids could take him seriously as a villain. He's not really a threat to anyone.
He takes over the school. He grows a toilet. He makes it toxic, and then he takes away children's ability to laugh.
Yeah, but like,
and he's gonna do it. He's gonna finish it.
Whereas, okay, Ramses, yes, he wasn't like necessarily a villain starting off, but especially when he loses his son because of Moses and the plague, you see the hate, like the despair, the anguishness. When you see the look in his eye when he looks at Moses, the pure hatred of Moses, it would scare me. It's intimidated a lot of people. Whereas Professor Poopy Pants is just not intimidating at all. And I think as a villain, no matter how outlandish and like silly this movie is, you still need to have somewhat of a severity of, like, at least even for a moment of, oh my God, this guy is terrifying, or this guy is going to do it. You don't really do it. Like, he's just joking. And your Professor Poopy Pants looks like the professor from Jimmy Neutron, if you know what I'm talking about.
I think it's like if Einstein and Blofeld had a baby and they dressed him like a Southern televangelist, which is epic and in and of itself. And that's the name of it's the first epic movie. I think you're trying to put too much pathos in a DreamWorks movie, and yours is based on the Bible, so I understand why you want to do that. But Ramses has no character. Everything he does is as a
he absolutely has character.
Reactionary to Moses. That's all he does. Even to the point at the end when he lets them go, we don't see the lead up to what motivates him to want to track down Moses and the people. We just see everything from Moses' perspective until the Egyptians get there.
Well,
why don't we get to spend any time with Ramses outside of his interactions with Moses? Why?
You understand why he went after him, because he killed his son. He took the last.
But why didn't he go after them then? Why did he let him go?
Because he was grieving. He was in despair. Like, he was still grieving for his child. Like, when you're grieving, like you're not all the way in your mindset right there. And again, he has a character. When he's younger, he's trying to live up to his father. His father actually preferred Moses over him. He wanted his father to respect him, to treat him as an equal, to become a future king. Whereas there really is no character to Professor Poopy Pants other than he wants to get revenge because people kept laughing at him because of his name. That's not a good enough.
He was going to get the Nobel Prize, and they wouldn't take him seriously. He was a professor, a scientist of serious clout, and they wouldn't take him seriously. So he decided to get revenge on everyone. That
by taking away their laughter, that's not a really villainous, like, oh, I mean, you're
talking doing brain surgery essentially on people against their will is not villainous. That's absolutely villainous.
In this movie, it was not going to hurt anyone other than taking your laughter. Whereas, you know, what's a worse plot? You know, taking away someone's laughter or enslaving an entire group of people.
He let them go though.
He would change his mind, and he also when they were slaves, he would have his people torture them when they weren't doing their work good enough.
And by the way, they turn into zombies when they lose their laughter. So it's not like nothing happens. They lose their free will, which is a big freaking deal, I think.
So do slaves in my film.
My film. Strike it from the record. Richard, we're going to start with you first on this one. You get 1 minute when you start talking.
It's kind of hard to debate two different types of villains into two completely different types of films. I will say what makes my villain the better villain, other than Professor Poopy Pants, is you take Ramsey seriously. That's when you see there has been moments where you just see the hate and the desire, like when he loses grieving his son. You see the intent. People are afraid and intimidated of him watching this. Professor Poopy Pants is never really intimidating throughout any of the film. Like, he tries to be, but he always with that accent of his, with him, like, you know, hopping up and down, just over exaggerating. I don't think kids take him seriously. I don't think if kids are laughing at the professor watching the movie constantly throughout the whole film, I don't think that's a good representation of the best villain, because the best villain is supposed to at least scare you or intimidate you just the slightest. Whereas Ramses, he goes after them. He tries to murder his own brother and then the people and the scene.
Okay. We're going to move over to Robert. Robert, you have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Richard said you relate to Ramses. I was never royal trying to live up to father's expectations. And also, he doesn't really try to do anything to stop Moses throughout the movie. He's weak, he's petulant, he's pouty throughout. That doesn't change with the added burden of responsibility. Professor Poopy Pants, he's a world that's turned against him. He's trying to do all he can to get rid of laughter because that's the thing that's burdening him. And he enslaves a school. He's going to enslave the town. He has grand designs. Yes, he's funny, but that's the course of the movie. He's supposed to be funny. At the first scene, when he's doing all these mad genius inventions, he's sarcastically talking about the wonders of the American public school system. He's snarky, and that's what I want from this type of movie from a villain. Someone who's biting, sarcastic. He appeals to kids and adults. And I mean, it's a kid's movie. They can be intimidating, but they can also be funny. He understood the assignment. I don't think Ramses did. I don't give a crap about Ramses because he doesn't exist beyond the scope of reacting to Moses.
Time. I hope you guys heard. I have to clean Bucky's ears when we're done. Okay, we're going to move on. Bring in the judges. We're also entering the third task. I hope you guys know.
Oh, no.
I should have left it real. Maggie and I watched Sorcerer's Stone back in October? December.
Yeah.
It's taken us this long to get to Goblet of Fire, so that's the life I'm living right now.
It's trying to watch movies with a kid. It's a very similar process.
We've been watching movies together. We just every night I'm like, okay, we can watch this or we can watch the next Potter movie. Yeah, let's watch something else. Potter's long as fuck. Okay. Mark, you're kicking this one off.
Cool. You know, I think what needs to be said here at the beginning is I think Robert is the real villain here, since he is constructed a way to get everybody on screen to say Dr. Poopy Pants. And that's just mean. So don't appreciate that. That being said, I did go with Robert in this one. I mean, I feel like even though, Richard had the points of, nobody takes him seriously, I do that I think that is kind of the point of this villain. And I think kind of Robert very clearly say that throughout. And then kind of with the hit of Ramsey's not really doing anything, I think that's kind of also that also kind of like where I feel like it is just gonna say I feel like the more villainous of these characters was probably Dr. Poopy Pants. So I feel like I had to go with Robert here.
Brooklyn.
This was actually like razor fucking thin. I thought these were two really good arguments for kind of like what you should be doing for villains. Like there's going to be the intimidating villain, or there's going to be like the fun villain that you're gonna kind of laugh along with. And I thought they did a really good job. I think what it came down to was the substance of the attack going to the other side, and for that I'm going with Robert. I think he did a really good job of kind of rounding out the, he's like, because I thought Richard did a really good job of being like, he's intimidating and like the whole slave work and whatnot. And it's just like, Robert is like, he's just petty. He was weak. I thought that was a really good job. But yeah.
Okay, my vote doesn't count. I also went with Robert. I thought that, honestly, I agree with both of you. I think that he just did a really good job of explaining why Poopy Pants, which, by the way, those books are incredible, is a great fucking villain for that movie. And that and Richard was kind of going on and on about how the movie's not that serious. It's not that intense. You want a villain that's threatening, blah blah blah. And Robert was like, for the movie that we have here, it works perfectly, and he's still doing some fucked up shit. He didn't say that the way that I'm saying it, but that's basically what he said. So I thought this was a great fight. So Robert is up 2-1. Richard needs to hit this in order to send it to the speed round. The next question was drafted by Richard. It is in the category of sports. And the question is, which member of the Mighty Ducks team would you want to teach you hockey? Not a Fandom category anymore, gentlemen. So, Richard, you get to kick this one off. You got 1 minute when you start talking.
Which member, if I want to learn how to teach hockey, I would want to learn from the best player of the Mighty Ducks team, someone who can teach me to be the very best that I can be. And that's why I chose Adam Banks. Adam Banks was arguably the best player on the Mighty Ducks team. In the first movie, he started off being on against the opposing team, the Hawks, and then making fun of the other Ducks. And then later on, Gordon Bombay was able to use his lawyer stipulations to bring Adam Banks to the Mighty Ducks team, whereas ever since then, he became a faithful member, leading up to even the Mighty Ducks Game Changers. I think Adam Banks would be the best member because he has learned a lot from his mistakes, from his experiences, and he's also the best player, in my opinion, on the team. So obviously I want to be the best. I need to learn from the best. I conclude the rest of my time.
Okay. Ending about 5 seconds early, we're going to bring in Robert. Robert, you are up 1 minute when you start talking.
Sometimes as a debater, you get nervous about trying to grasp for the low-hanging fruit of the obvious answer. Sometimes it's easiest to gather for sustenance. So I did that, and I went with Charlie Conway. There are literally conversations, especially in D2 The Mighty Ducks, in a scene Charlie references he and Bombay have where they conversed that he believed he would be a better coach than a player, which is clear because he's not the most talented player, but he evokes leadership role. He has a lot of knowledge about the game. He was the captain for the team throughout the movies. And when you're the captain, you're essentially the extension of the coach on the field. Adam Banks, yes, he's a great player, but usually someone who's preternaturally talented like that, it doesn't mean that they can translate into coaching and teaching me about something about like playing hockey. which that all I really know about Adam Banks is that he can play hockey well. I've never heard him speak more than a sentence at a time. I don't know whether he could relay to me the inner machinations of the game of hockey to a point that I would understand it, because I've never heard him have a long conversation where Charlie has talked a lot, and I know he knows a lot.
Time. Okay. Charlie versus Adam. You guys get 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
The question is who you want, which member do you want to teach to play hockey, not who you want to be the coach. And I think Adam Banks is the best person to teach you hockey because he knows how to play the game extremely well. He can be patient with you. He can help you learn all the moves. Whereas Charlie, he was a nice kid in the first 2 movies. The third movie, he was a complete dick. He walked out on his whole team because he didn't like how his new coach was teaching things. He didn't like they were changing things. He couldn't learn to adapt as a good player does do in the game of sports. And I don't want someone to teach me to play hockey if they're not good at learning to adapt.
Richard, some of the best coaches and people who teach, and by the way, coaching and teaching sort of go hand in hand. I know what you're saying, but they do go hand in hand. Some of the best people who teach and coach and get the most out of people have an attitude problem. Bobby Knight, I guess, just someone I could think of right off the bat. Adam Banks could try to teach me something, but given his talent level of hockey, and I am not that talented, how am I supposed to know that I can do those moves? He might teach me things that I have no clue. I'm not coordinated enough. Charlie started off being Spazway Conway, and I at least knew he progressed to a point where Bombay was comfortable enough to teach him the triple deke, and he won the championship for them. And again, he was the captain throughout. And yeah, he was had anger problems in the third one, but he was still trying to teach. He was still helping Fulton skate. And this is after Fulton's played hockey for years. So at least I know that he was still looking out for his team, and he got the captainship back, and he learned how to play hockey a different way for the betterment of the team, which is something that I would want to be relayed to me, all the different aspects of hockey.
Fulton already knew how to skate by D3. He was just hanging out with him because they were really close friends. Adam Banks, he had the same training as Charlie did with Gordon Bombay. Maybe not as long, like halfway through, but even D2, D3 had the same kind of training. He knows, and he's worked with the original members of the Mighty Ducks and the current members, so he knows other people who are not as good as him, how he can learn to adapt. Charlie, like I said, when he walked out on his team, and even when we're going to the Mighty Duck Game Changers, the TV show, which by the way, that is canon, so it is canon for this argument. He's no longer speaking to Gordon Bombay as a coach. He lost faith in him.
I just want to say, I want to jump in. This won't affect your time. We do not let TV affect, so that will not be part of the.
Okay, sorry. I will disregard that. Again, D3, he did walk out on the team just because he didn't like how things went. As a player, as someone you want to play sports, you have to learn to adapt with new rules of the game or games that you're not comfortable with. You have to go right through it. Adam Banks always.
Adam Banks wasn't there. He was a varsity player. We don't know what kind of rules.
Yeah, because he was that good.
Because he was already Adam Banks, the player who was on the varsity. And Richard, I was talking about when they're doing the drills at practice, and Fulton and him are doing laps, and he's still training him to skate. That's not when they got kicked off. That's while they're still on the team. And Charlie did learn from those mistakes and come back. So you can harp a lot on D3, but there's 3 movies. And Adam Banks, you said, was there for a lot of the training. A lot of the times he's hurt. And frankly, I don't want a fragile person like Adam Banks trying to teach me a tough sport like hockey. And by the way, he's pretty whiny as well. I want someone who meshes with my learning style, not someone who complains a lot because he happens to be rich and the people make fun of him because
Charlie was really whiny too in D3, quite a bit throughout pretty much the whole movie.
But it was a bit there in the middle, but he was not whiny at the beginning. He was not whiny at the end. He wasn't whiny through the first 2 movies.
And also in D3, when they were doing the scrimmage, the varsity versus what were the JV versus varsity, he illegally checked Banks. Like, I don't want someone teaching me to play dirty. And that was something that was in
hockey though sometimes.
Yeah, but that was the whole point of Charlie in the first movie, was he didn't want to learn to play dirty. And then growing up in D3, he started to play dirty. And again, Adam Banks, say what you will about him, he never has played dirty once. He always plays fairly. He always plays with respect. And again,
after the check. which was also somewhat illegal. I know that's retaliation, but he still took him down during that. So it's not like Banks wouldn't do something like that. And by the way, the only real training, like, again, he doesn't talk. Like, how am I supposed to know he can relay these things? The only time I ever heard him talk a lot was when he's in the driveway in D2 doing his own drills. How am I supposed to know he can relay
He talked
that?
with Gordon Bombay in that whole scene with him reaching the glove, saying he didn't want to let the team down, didn't want to let his father down. He wanted to be the best player, and that's the kind of person I want to be. Someone who wants to be there for the team, someone who wants to be there for family, to do the best, and that's someone I want to teach. Whereas Charlie, like you said, he's not the best player.
He's striking from the record. Robert, you get to close first. 1 minute when you start talking.
The best players don't always make the best coaches. The people who evoke leadership, the people who can be an extension of their coaches, coaching and teaching goes hand in hand. When Bombay doesn't show up in D2 and Michelle McKay has to come up, who's the one who grabs her? Charlie. Who's the one who goes through all the drills and makes sure she is aware of the different understandings of the outside of hockey? It's Charlie. Who's the one who does the recruiting, comes up with the plays, makes plays in D2 to get them back in the Iceland game? Charlie. He was made the captain. He knows, he's very knowledgeable about the sport. He's very smart, especially on the ice. And people trust him as the captain, and I want someone I can trust to be able to make sense of hockey to me. Banks, yes, he's very talented, but that doesn't mean that you can teach me the outside of what hockey is, especially if like you're very skilled, but I'm not very skilled. Can you relate to me on a level, beginner level? I don't think Banks can do that. He was never put in a leadership position despite his talent, which means he either couldn't convey the needs of leadership or he wasn't trusted. I don't trust him to be able to teach me in a way like Charlie can, and he did.
All right, Richard, we move on to you. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Charlie Conway is not trustworthy. He left his team because things were getting too hard for him. He was too hard to cling to the old ways of what he knows, and wouldn't accept to learn any other new ways. He eventually did, but still, I don't want someone to teach me if they're not going to. Someone I don't trust, and I do not trust Charlie. Adam Banks is 100% the best person to teach you. He has been with the team up to the first movie. He is a very good player. He can teach you the right things, and he has learned to work with the other Mighty Ducks. He absolutely can teach you a slow way. And also, Charlie Banks was made captain because he's the main character of the film. Adam Banks wasn't, but he's still arguably the best. And I do want someone to be the best. I want to be learned from the best. And again, that is someone I want to learn to teach me to play hockey. Someone who is the very best, because they can make me the very best. And it doesn't matter how long it takes me. I will be the best.
Okay.
Good match, Richard.
Oh, you too. Like no one ever wanted to catch them. No, sorry.
I am
Judges ready?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go first. This was tough. I thought this was probably the best one. Was the one that I feel like both were the most knowledgeable on. And arguably the two correct choices for the question. I mean, I already wrote it, so I can't change it. I went with Robert. I think that, again, this was the closest one to me because Richard is right in the sense of there have been many times in the series where they've talked about how his character is the best player. They recruit him. They use tactics to get him because he's the best player, and then he's just always the best player. But Robert took this from a perspective of who do you want to teach you? And Charlie just knows so much about the game. He's the captain. He can be that coach-like person for you. And I thought that Richard's hit about we're not talking about coach. We kind of are at the end of the day. I think that the way that Robert was able to put into words, he might not be the best player on the team, but he is the best one to teach you the game. I thought it just worked really well, but it was really close. This was tough. I went with Robert though. Mark, where are you voting and why?
Well, first I want to say I did not think Bobby Knight would ever be brought up in the context of
I get it.
this. So just want to bring that up first of all, and I kind of feel like you read the question and I just feel like I kind of knew where this was gonna go, and it went the way it would, and like I ended up going with Robert because just kind of knowing like this. Like at least these movies pretty well. I knew exactly where Richard was going, and it's the best way to attack Charlie Conway, the third movie, because he sucks in the third movie. So I feel like Robert had at least good defenses for that, and Richard, I think, honestly backtracked at least in the closing for a little bit, where said he couldn't change. He eventually does. Like, well, then he can't change, like you said in your closing. Like,
I couldn't bring up Game Changers where he changed back. That's canon.
but yeah, I feel like Robert brought up the points he needed to for Charlie. Like he was placed in leadership position throughout the entire franchise. He's, I think, the most relatable one to teach you hockey, and that they've established it throughout that he is that he's considered himself a better coach than a player, and I think that's what's waiting here. You're muted.
You're muted, Tim.
Of course I am. Brooklyn, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone?
So a couple of housekeeping things. One, I'm glad to be here for a hockey-esque question. I was on my head to make sure that everybody was getting the rules right. As a person who grew up with the NHL, I was disheartened that a college basketball coach was brought up. So I wanted to bring up five. I wanted to bring up 5 current or former NHL coaches that would fit this role.
Scotty Bowman,
quite well. John Tortorella, Mark Crawford, Paul Maurice, Joel Quenneville, and Mike Keenan, all similar to Bobby Knight. But I actually would have ended up going with Richard. I thought there was a lot of punches thrown, and I think the nail in the coffin for me was the whole clean versus dirty argument. I think that was really good. But Robert brought out some really good points about like kind of teaching the triple deke. The whole coaching versus teaching thing I thought was kind of a wash, because coaching is essentially teaching. But yeah, I thought Richard did a really good job with his attacks, but also his defense.
All right, well, that means your winner is Robert Castner. We're going to go into post-match interviews. We're going to start by talking to Richard. Richard, man, a year ago, I would have been out on the porch with you smoking that cig, but holy smokes, it's been a year. Richard, great shit. You did really good tonight, and honestly, I meant everything I said earlier on about you being one of the most underrated debate players. Your record, you're one of the players that's played the most. You're now at 9 matches. You got a knockout on the record. Your record is now 4-5. One of those guys who just always shows up and delivers fantastic performances, even though you claim to be a little nervous or maybe not super you're worried about how you're going to sound or whatever. I thought you did great tonight. How are you feeling about the match?
I'm feeling good. Bummed I lost, but again, it happens. Like they're just tough categories. Like it was either Adam, like especially the Mighty Ducks, either Adam or Banks. I mean Charlie or Banks. I mean, again, kudos for him with the Captain Underbands. I did not think that was going to win. I tried watching that movie. I was like, nope, I got to turn this off. Can't do it. Watching scenes. I'm sorry, no. Like, no, Robert's a great competitor. I mean, I always have problems mumbling my words and always repeating the same things over and over. Just like I need to hit certain things. And then like the things I think about, I don't think about till after this match ended. And like, damn, I should have said this. I should have said that. And again, like, I do think the Mighty Ducks game changer should have been allowed because, frankly, if you were in teaching now, they're going to be adults, and they were adults in that TV show.
I wish if I could, I would. Unfortunately, though, we've said that you can't bring up like Clone Wars and stuff in Star Wars. Otherwise, I would. But Richard, good job today in the match. I'm happy to see you. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. But we're going to bring in the winner today, Robert Castner. Robert, Another win under your belt. Your record now 3-1 with a KO. Your one loss, the current champion. Robert, are you going to make your way there through this tournament to get to Cody? What are you thinking?
I mean, if you know how brackets work, I have a pretty tough freaking road to do that.
That's true.
I mean, this is step 1 of 4 to get there. Yeah, it would be nice to get the revenge on Cody, but I got a long way to go. Richard made me work for this. I was glad I swept a couple, but sometimes you go and you have preconceived notions about like the points you'll get versus the points you won't based on choices. And I won one I didn't think I'd get, and I lost one I didn't think I'd lose. So that happens, but then you got to pick yourself up. Richard's a great competitor. I will say that I do put a lot of work into this. I write notes, and then sometimes I write my openings and closings because I want to make sure that I'm being articulate and eloquent with how it is that I get out the argument, because I could have stumbles, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to have that be the reason why I don't get out the points. So.
That's fair. You kind of alluded to it. You got a long road ahead. You are going to be playing the winner of a match that aired so long ago. So I'm just going to say it. You're playing Jacoby Bancroft, the number 2 seed.
Yeah.
Now, former champion.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about going up against someone like Jacoby?
I know watching that match that Cody was basically saying that he will be tough to beat, and he will. He's a former champion. I do think, you're talking about Richard being underrated. I know I'm 3-1. I have a knockout, but I still think I'm a little bit underrated with how this goes, just because I haven't been in it a lot, and I haven't got to do a lot of matches yet. I mean, 4's pretty fair, but it's not as big a sample size as people like Richard or other people. So I just think it's dependent on the categories and dependent on if I get swarmed by the wave of Jacoby energy. If I can swim past that, then maybe I can buoy myself and maybe get out a win, but it will be tough.
Yeah, that's fair. Robert, I look forward to it. We are going to see it very soon. Thank you for a great match. And that's going to do it for us. Let's get final thoughts, starting with Brooklyn.
This was really good. I thought Richard is more on the attack side than I thought initially. So that was really cool to kind of see. But yeah, I'm super pumped for Robert versus Jacoby. I think though that's another like very calm for the most part. So yeah, I think that'll be good.
Awesome. Mark, what about you? Final thoughts?
This one was just really close. I think I can, especially for me, I really could have gone either way for at least the last 3 questions. And I think at least probably just some of the funner questions I think I had to be on the desk for. But no, Robert is looking like a menace, and Richard giving him a good showing here.
Awesome. All right, well, that's going to do it for us tonight at Fanzone Debate. I want to thank Richard and Robert for playing. Thank you to Brooklyn and Mark for judging. I've been Tim. We will see you guys on another match very soon. We have got Caleb Coho going up against Brandon Cohen next week, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you real soon with the next one. Until then, bye-bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.